So in this video now, what we are going to do, we are going to set up the failover cluster final settings. So far what we did, in the previous videos, we created the 3 servers, then we installed server 2016 on them, then we installed the Active Directory, we joined these 2 machines to Active Directory, we added the 2 network cards, we also added the storage, and we configured a shared structure. Now we need to set up the failover cluster on these. Now before we can set up the failover cluster, I need to do network card settings on these 2. So here the only thing we need to do is I can go back to the server manager, local server, and within the server we have 2 network cards, 1 and 2. So this is for the public communication, so I'm going to name this as public network card. So this is for the public communication, and this is for private. Why is it a private network card? Because it's a private network card because it is only private. It is set to be private because it is the cluster communication. It is used for this one is used for the normal network communication. This is why it is known as public network card, and this network card is especially for the cluster communication. Now, what is a cluster communication? Cluster communication is basically this communication so we created this since it is a failover cluster here. These 2 nodes, one of these nodes will be a primary node, the second one is secondary node, and it's down. So one is active node, the other one is not. It's not an active node. So these 2 cards are used, which is this IP address, the private network card. So these 2 are private network card. This one is public network card. So these 2 cards will exchange the heartbeat. So at any point in time, if the private server goes down, if this server goes down, this card will be also down. So in this way, this server from this card will know that this server is down, and this will automatically become active. So basically, this is just to check each other for these 2 servers are checking each other if the primary server is still alive. So we did change the name, and one more thing that we need to do on the private network cards is that we need to disable this. We also need to disable these 2, client for Microsoft Network and file, and also so these 2 needs to be disabled on the network card. If go to advanced, and we also in the DNS we need to disable this option. So here register this connection to the DNS. We don't want this connection to be so this is an important setting for the private network card, only for the private network card, not for the public network card. So again, here we are going to go into, first of all, disable these 2. So on this one, this is disabled. I think I have to do it on this second server. So here I'm gonna go to these 2, and then IPv4, go to advanced, then go to DNS here, and rest is fine. So the networking settings are good. So once this is done, we are ready to install failover cluster role on this. So how do we install? So these 2, we don't need to install this here. Now we install failover cluster role on this one. So on this, we need to go to dashboards, and then go to roles. We need to go to the feature, next, and next, and next. So on the features, we need to select failover clustering option, and that's it. So we will install. We will do the same thing on the other server. So go to dashboard, go to add roles and features, and in here we need to go to next, and next, and next. Here select failover cluster. So once this is done, we will install, and once this is installed, then we will continue with the rest of the configuration. So it is still installing on both of the servers, so it may take like 4 or 5 minutes. So once it is installed, then we will continue. So failover cluster feature is installed on both of them. So all I need to do is to close it, and then I will go into tools, and within tools I'll look for failover cluster manager. Now when doing this configuration, you just have to do it on one of them and not 2 of them. So the very first thing we always do whenever configuring a failover cluster is run a validation wizard. Validation wizard will make sure that all the required setting for the cluster is fine. So here I'm just going to right click and validate configuration. Now validate configuration will ask you how many nodes are there. So this is saying enter the nodes here. So I'm going to just browse and also name it. So 360, I'll just type 360, and this is my server name. Okay, so in this case, it's saying that first I need to log into the cloud. I think on this server, I'm not logged in. So anyways, I will provide this IP address, sorry, this password. And here it shows me the 3 servers. So that's why I type, if I would have typed in exactly the server name, it would just give me one. When you type the first 3 letters, it will show you everything with that name. So these are the 2 nodes. So these both, I'll select both of them, not the first one, and add. So now if the failover clustering feature is installed properly on both of them, then you will be able to see both of them. Otherwise, one will fail and the other one won't work. So if it fails on one, it means that all of the previous steps that we did is all fine. If anyone is missing, it might be that maybe the failover clustering feature is not installed properly. But here it shows both of them, which is a good sign. And here it will run all of the tests, the validation test for the failover cluster. We will just go to next. We'll wait for some time. What it does, it checks the IP addresses, it checks the network card, it will check the private and public network card, it will check the storage, that if it has the shared storage available. Now if it finishes with some warnings, that will be fine. But if it finishes with errors, then we need to fix those errors. So it takes around, maybe sometimes it will take around 5-10 minutes in the real environment. But here, I mean, if it is just a 2-node cluster, it shouldn't take more than like 4-5 minutes. So it is still going on. So I thought maybe in the meantime, while this goes on and it's about to finish, we can quickly go through our architecture. So right from the start, from the video, we decided that we will install failover cluster. We will have 3 servers. One server will be the witness server and the iSCSI disk, and that will be witness disk server will be automatically selected within the cluster validation once the cluster configuration starts. And then that it has 2-node cluster. The first server will be, we decided, will be Active Directory server. It has 1 network card for storage, and the other 2 servers have 2 network cards, and we configured them. And the first server will have an additional disk for the iSCSI storage, and then we will install the 2-node cluster. So we are at this stage validating. After that, we will install failover cluster. So this configuration is completed. Now all we need to do is install the failover cluster and test a service to check that if it is successful, the failover cluster is working. So I'm going to go back here. And so as I said that we don't need to run this visit twice on both of them. It is running on both of them now for configuration. And so we'll just wait for this to be finished. Okay, so server validation is completed, and server validation just gave us some warning. It took around 10 to 15 minutes, and the warning is fine. We didn't got any error message. So if there would have been any serious error message, this would have been ended up in error, and you were not able to create the cluster. So since we got the warning, we also have this here that we can create the cluster right from this place. So I'm gonna just go and create this cluster. Otherwise, if you just close this, there is an option outside as well where you can create the cluster. So I'm going to just select here and then finish. And once this is done, this starts the cluster wizard, and I will go to next here. So the very first thing, we need to provide the cluster name. So basically this is what we need to do. And so we started from here, and this is the cluster name and IP address we need to provide. So we need to provide that. So basically this will look like this. The 2 servers, users will connect to the cluster name, and then they will be connected to the active node. If this node goes down at any time, then user will be automatically directed to this node. So that's the main purpose of the cluster. So here I'm going to use this 360 cloud CLU. This is our cluster name, and it should be from our public network. So it's not from this network. There should be our public network, and the IP address we decided will be 10.50. So I'm going to go here and configure. So in this, I'm going to just say 10.50 and next. So what it does, and that's pretty much it for setting up the cluster. Once this is done, it is now setting up the cluster, and it will set up the node, and it will show us the configuration. So in this video, I'm going to verify the cluster configuration. In the next video, we'll use the cluster to basically make a service highly available, and we'll test the cluster. So let's wait for this to finish. So it should finish, since the validation, the main purpose of the validation is to make sure that all of the requirements of clusters is completed. And since all the requirements of the cluster is completed, we should be able to finish properly now. So it is just finishing up, and it is finished. And in here, now you should be able to see the cluster. So when you are working in any organization, even in your organization, the cluster would exactly look like this. So you can, first of all, in order to manage clusters, so I'm going to close this and come back to this. This is all configured now. Let's say you just joined a new company, and now or you want to, your boss wants you to manage failover cluster. So in order to do that, first of all, you need to go to Server Manager. From the Server Manager, you will go to Tools and open Failover Cluster Manager. Now, Failover Cluster Manager, once you open, it will show you how many nodes are there, how much storage is configured with the cluster. Make sure you don't make any changes to this. You're just looking at the configuration, because any change you make, that would affect the high availability, the configuration of the cluster. So here, first of all, I will connect to the cluster we validated, we created. Now we just need to connect to the cluster. And in here, it provides us the existing cluster name, and you will connect to this cluster. So it is connected. So in here, it will show us the configuration. For example, for now, there is no service. The service that needs to be highly available will be here. Within the nodes, it should give us 2 nodes. Both nodes are available. Within the disk, it should show us the shared disk that we had. So this is the shared disk. Remember, this is the one disk that we created. This is the disk witness and owner. Basically, this disk has the information, how many nodes are there and which node is active. So this is a very, very important disk that it is automatically created. And then within the network, it is showing us the 2 networks here. So thank you for watching this video. I will see you